coming to us from Columbia University.
Good morning, everyone, and happy birthday to Dan. I am absolutely delighted to be back at Stanford and to see many old friends and make some new ones too. And I just want to join in thanking again Gita and Pat and Suzanne for all the hard work that went into putting this together. I'm also excited to tell you a little bit about the work that I have been doing at Columbia over the last about 10 years, and unlike what Laura said, it will be the furthest away from which I think is going to be consistent with my path as a graduate student. So I'll speak a little bit about that right at the end. But I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about my actually main responsibilities at Columbia, which are related to teaching. And then I will tell you about some work that we have been doing recently on evaluating radiological conditions in the Marshall Islands, which were the site of U.S. nuclear testing in the 40s and 50s. And this is work that we've been primarily doing with undergraduates. So I'm the director at Columbia of Frontiers of Science. This is our science core course. What that means is that all students at Columbia College have to take this course, and they take it in their first year at Columbia. And the course consists of a weekly lecture attended by about, almost on good days, about all the students. That's about 550 in each semester. And then we have a weekly seminar where the students break into groups of about 20. And to facilitate all of this, we have a group of about 20 faculty members teaching each semester. Some of our faculty, including our Dean of Science, Peter Domenical, teach just lectures. Some people teach both lectures and seminars. And then we have a vibrant fellows program, and the bulk of the seminars are taught by our fellows who are mostly very recent PhDs in STEM fields. What are our goals? What do we try to do with all of those students? We try to teach them how to think scientifically. We refer to this as scientific habits of mind. And we try to expose them to the frontiers in 4 scientific disciplines. And I like to say that these 2 goals are very much related. We use the 4 frontiers as context for teaching students how to think scientifically, and at the same time, in order for them to truly appreciate what is happening in these fields and how we got there, they need to have some scientific habits of mind. So what do I mean by scientific habits of mind? We teach them some basic statistics, basic probability, how to read and really draw meaning from graphs, how to conduct calculations, including back-of-the-envelope calculations, identify proxies and feedbacks, develop a sense of scale. And these are really the skills that we want them to take into not just their careers, but their lives as productive and engaged citizens. When I introduce the course to the students, I always tell them that science is arguably the most profound intellectual achievement of the last half millennium, and that it has fundamentally changed the way in which we think about ourselves, the ways in which we think about the physical material world around us, on both the smallest and the largest of scales, on the way we think about our planet and the life that it harbors. And so the units that we have in the course, well, they actually change year to year. They typically, we typically have sort of 2 biological and 2 physical sciences represented. So in one such unit on physics, it was actually my husband Emlyn. Some of you remember him, and he says hi and happy birthday. It was he was giving a series of lectures in which he wanted to focus on sort of the physics of the small, and he went from kind of the physics of the atom, the quantum mechanics, to physics of the nucleus, and wanted to teach students about nuclear weapons, and then down to particle physics and what's inside the proton. And it was during this set of lectures, this was the first time in 2011, that we sort of became acutely of both the seriousness of the nuclear weapons threat and also the kind of lack of awareness and engagement on this issue, particularly in the younger generation. And so when I talk about this, I often show this graph, and I'm not going to try to go through sort of everything the graph can tell us, but I want to point out two things. One is that there are currently 9 countries in the world that possess nuclear weapons. And secondly, at this moment in time, we have about 10,000 nuclear warheads in the world, mostly in possession of the US and Russia, but also, again, 7 other countries as well. And each of these weapons is on the order of about 100 times more powerful than the bomb that was used in the attack of Hiroshima. So what we're really looking at, in principle, is on the order of 1 million Hiroshima bombs in the world today, all really sort of subject to potentially accidents, potentially, falling into the wrong hands. State rogue actors are concerned as well. So just to make, less festive than perhaps we do. So what are we doing about this? So what basically started as a kind of summer program for students to explore these and engage in this topic, perhaps creatively, perhaps analytically, it's really grown into actually a center at Columbia. Students named it the K1 Project, and if you're interested in the name, I can tell you later where that comes from. But we have a variety of resources actually on our website, which have been produced by students over the years. Articles, films, both documentaries and creative films, interviews with experts, educational videos, and activities. And actually our website was very recently added to the list of United Nations disarmament and education resources. So we're really excited about that. And in 2014, we were actually here at Stanford. I got to see Dan. And we came with a group of 3 students, and we sort of tasked them. There's a lot of arms control, sort of arms security expertise in the area. And we kind of tasked them with go and find some topic of current interest and make a documentary about it. And the students got to learn about what was happening at that time. It was a lawsuit that the Marshall Islands had filed against the US and other nuclear weapon states for their failure to comply with what is an international treaty, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, according to which the nuclear weapon states are supposed to negotiate in good faith towards total and complete disarmament, and they're clearly not doing that. So the Marshall Islands filed this lawsuit, and our students actually, and Emlyn, I didn't go on that first trip, flew out to the Marshall Islands and sort of learned not just about the lawsuit, but also about the nuclear legacy. If I can just ask Paul, can you just give me some water, please? I'm sorry, my mouth is getting dry. Thank you. So where are the Marshall Islands? So the Marshall Islands are in the middle of the Pacific, just north of the equator and west of the international date line. I like to say that if you sort of draw a line, thank you so much. Thanks. If you draw a line between Australia and Hawaii and sort of put your pen right in the middle, which probably hit the Marshall Islands. It's a series of 29 coral atolls, and the capital of the Marshall Islands is Madro, and I've been there twice. The group has gone many times. And this is what Madro looks like from airplanes. This is on my trip just this past May. So that picture is actually showing as white both the land and the lagoon. So it's these incredibly thin, narrow, these are remnants of all volcanoes, incredibly thin, narrow pieces of land with these beautiful lagoons in the middle. So what happened in the Marshall Islands? from 1946 to 1958, the United States tested 67 nuclear weapons. This is out of a total of over 1,000 weapons that the U.S. tested, but only 219 of them were tested above ground. So the Marshall Islands actually received about a third of all of the tests. But this doesn't really do justice to the numbers, because in addition to just a large number of tests, we actually tested some of the most powerful weapons, the hydrogen bombs, in the Marshall Islands. And so the total energy yield, the power of the tests that were conducted there, is over 50%, about 55% of the energy yield of all the tests the U.S. had ever conducted. And the tests were done on 2 atolls, Nikolic and Bikini. And in addition to the populations of those 2 atolls, which were relocated and sort of suffered from a long history of not being able to go back to their islands, there were also 2 populated atolls at the time, Rongelap and Utrecht, which specifically received a very large amount of radiation fallout from a test that was conducted in 1954, Castle Bravo. Castle Bravo had an energy yield of 15 megatons of TNT. What that means is that you would need 15 million tons of TNT to produce an equivalent explosion. And this was about 1,000 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. This mushroom cloud here rose up 25 miles into the atmosphere. So just absolutely a sort of a monstrous explosion. In terms of the impact, so Bikini Atoll is where Bravo happened. It's also where the first test in the Marshall Islands happened in 1946. And the reason that we all know the word bikini is because a French designer actually that year in 46 designed a swimsuit and wanted to name it after bikini because he wanted his design to be explosive. So that's where that comes from. And everyone I've talked to who speaks a different language says that their language actually uses the word bikini. There's sort of no translation. Nikolic, as I mentioned, was the other side of the test, although bikini received most of the energy yield. Bikini itself received 40% of the energy yield of all U.S. nuclear tests. And then there's Rongelap, which is about 100 miles from Bikini, where a population was living at the time of Bravo and got exposed to significant radiation. And then Utrecht, where another population is living as well, and it's a little bit farther away. So,
Can I just interrupt real quick?
yes, of course.
Roughly how much space are we talking about here? A couple of thousand miles? Or
Yeah, so basically on a trip from Maduro up and over, it's about 1,200 miles. So this is 100 from Rongelap to Bikini. That's 100 miles. So this is on the order of 8 actually. So we have conducted 3 boat trips to the Marshall Islands to sort of learn about the current environmental conditions, and we've been making 4 types of measurements. We started out with, on the trip in 2015, with just measuring external gamma radiation. If I walk around, how much radiation am I being exposed to? And then we moved into some sort of more complex measurements and analyses, looking at concentrations, particularly of cesium-137, which gets incorporated from soil into the food sources, and then also concentrations of different isotopes in both soil and ocean sediment. These are 2 students making measurements in Rongelap. This was on the first trip in 2015. And we published the results in PNAS. We visited 6 islands, 3 on Nikolic, 2 on Bikini Atoll, and 1 on Rongelap Atoll. We didn't make it to the farthest Utrecht Atoll on the first trip. And the big conclusion from that paper was not only did not only have external gamma radiation that was above an agreed upon limit between the U.S. and the Marshall Islands, which is about 100 milligrams from all sources. So this was just from one source, well above the limit. But it was also, we actually found that the values, our values, were about 10 times higher than what DOE had been saying was true for decades, actually. So this garnered quite a bit of media attention. In fact, I would say that every news article got something wrong. So that was sort of an interesting experience. But there was definitely an interest in this discrepancy between our data and historical data.
Now,
Yes.
is anyone still living in the bikini? Or?
Yes, so that's a good question. In terms of that map, there is a population living in Eniwetok. Bikini is not resettled, and neither is Rongelap, and there's a population living in Utrecht. So I was going like that. Yes, but nobody is living in Bikini right now. And the question really is, can someone go back? So we've been doing actually more, so on the subsequent trips, we've done more external gamma radiation measurements. We went to more islands. The only one that's a repeat island here is Bikini. The other ones all in, so the reference curve here is Madra, which is in the south. And so what we learned from the people there is they were really interested in not just the safety of the island where the population might live, but also the outer islands, because they frequently go there to collect food and for other rituals and so on. So we expanded to more islands. I just wanted to show you the maps because they're really beautiful. This is actually, I'll show you a picture of the student who made all of this in just a moment. But you can basically see on this plot that for all of the atolls, Eniwetok, Bikini, and Rongelap, we have now identified at least one island which has very high radiation levels. So it's a complicated picture. And then Utrecht actually is the only one, so that's the one farthest away. It's the only one that appears to actually be okay. And that's a good thing, the population lives there. We can see cesium in the fruits, and what we're doing currently is an analysis to try and compare the values to EPA limits, and so determine what percentage of fruits on any given island is actually above the limits for cesium-137 in food sources. We're also doing soil analysis, and we can see four different, we can make four different radioisotope measurements, including two measurements for plutonium, and we see that on some of the islands, plutonium is actually above the action limit. So it's sort of a very complex picture of what's going on. And most, yes. Yeah.
Because Bikini is 10 to 11 and it's not the highest.
Bikini is not the highest. That's correct. So
Because
there's
things are
one.
growing.
Yeah. So there's one island which is called Brunet in Eniwetok. So Eniwetok, you saw many of the numbers I was showing you were low, but Eniwetok was cleaned, and then all of that waste was put on one island, which is called Brunet, and then they built a dome around it. And we see elevated numbers there. We also see, very surprisingly, this is on Nayan. So 16 and 17 are Nayan. And Nayan is on Rongelap. It's a northern island. It was not a site of the testing. So we think something funny is happening there, either with waste having been put there, or, so it's yes.
So isn't the dome bottomless?
The dome is
Doesn't it start to
bottomless,
seep out? Or you
and it's a very big concern. So we haven't done quite an extensive analysis of Brunet itself. We do have some preliminary samples and measurements. People are very concerned about the structural integrity of the Bruni Dome, especially as you can imagine climate change and sea level rise are a concern for the Marshall Islands as well. Okay, so let me just try to finish here. Where also this last summer we had a group, a mix of students and actually professional divers who went. So this map is not radiation. I'm showing you just the crater depth, but they had to dive basically down to 55 meters and collect ocean sediments. And we're going to have, the plan is those samples are off and shipped for analysis, and the plan is to have basically 100 data points to map out the Bravo crater, the levels of all those different isotopes in the ocean sediment. This is Maverick Abella. She's a student from Hawaii. This is Maverick playing with kids in Utrecht. And as I mentioned, she made most of the graphs that I showed you in the talk. I was going to go over sort of our findings, but as you see, the picture for the 4 different atolls is very complicated. When I speak about this work, I always like to say that to me, this is important because it's for 2 reasons. One is about righting a historical wrong, and the other is about learning from history, not just about the danger of nuclear weapons, but about danger of new technologies in general. So I need to thank Dan, and those of you who were at my thesis defense remember that I cried a lot at the end when I thanked Dan. So I'm absolutely determined today not to do that. So I'm going to try to hold back the tears. So this is my family, my husband Evan, whom I've mentioned already. Well, I want to say a couple of things. First, I'm going to say that I was remembering a conversation I had with Dan, actually in the Clark Center. So this was helping Katrina and me to date when this was built. I said, oh, it must have been before 2005, because I had a conversation with Dan in the cafe in the Clark Center. And during that conversation, I was sort of expressing some doubts about my own abilities as a scientist. And Dan said, well, what about being a mom? You know, how do you feel about that? And I said, oh, I'm a great mom. It's just amazing. So I was looking at this picture of my son's hair was a bit overgrown. My daughter was in desperate need of more clothing. So I was definitely rethinking that answer. I'm a great mom, you know? I think I'm not a good scientist, but I'm a great mom. So, but in terms of the picture of my kids actually provides a really good timeline for sort of my own graduate experience. So I started graduate school in '99. I joined Dan's lab in 2000. I got married and had my daughter Inga in 2001. I then got pregnant again and went on bed rest, as Dan reminded me, in 2004. And then had my second child, Misha, in 2005 in March. And then I defended my thesis in May. So it was a whirlwind. And really, I mean, and this is where I'm going to get sort of overly emotional. But the fact that Dan, see, I told you, at least I warned you this time. The fact that Dan really supported me to sort of do things my own way, and on top of it, oh, I didn't mention one more thing. I moved in 2001 down to Caltech because my husband was a professor there, and so I even, flew back and forth. So I did it all very non-traditionally, and really Dan was behind me the whole way and supporting me at a level that I will always be incredibly grateful for. And I just want to say, much has been said about lessons from Dan. For me, the biggest lesson will always be to work hard. And that's something that I learned from Dan, and that has really stayed with me. There's no free lunch, and there's no sort of you have to work hard and you have to keep at it. So thank you, Dan, for everything, really, and thank you all for listening. I'm sorry, I think
I think it's okay.
okay.
Can I just ask?
Yes.
You can ask the question and then come up.
Are isotopes enriched in the local population?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, if you draw blood, for example, could you
Yes, they do. They also can do whole body counting and so on. I mean, right now there's no, as far as I know, they're no longer doing that. They were doing that for a long time, but the history is very, very ugly. They would be doing whole body counting in the people, and then at one point they were like, you shouldn't be living here, get out. And it was
but not
absolutely.
anymore, essentially.
Yeah, not anymore. I mean, I think the two populations, our data certainly suggests that people in Utrecht are fine. People in Eniwetok are okay. The islands they live on, Grenada is dangerous, and another northern island is probably not okay as well. And so, if they're sort of sticking to where they are, they're probably, the people living there now are probably okay. Yes.
I actually have two questions.
Yes.
First of all, I'm wondering how, there may not be any ocean currents, but if there are ocean currents and also fish traveling, right, because these are presumably food sources, how they protect this?
There's radiation in the fish, there's no doubt. Some of it is from testing, but some of it is actually the radiation in the food from things like polonium is actually coming from natural sources. So it's not even the largest contributor.
And then the second question might be totally ignorant, but because I don't know how the radiation from the weapons testing is different or similar to the radiation, say, that was dispersed in Chernobyl. But if it is similar, then I'm wondering if what you can learn, you can transfer to Chernobyl, or I don't know if there's any data points from the Russian. Actually, it's not the Russians.
Yeah, the Ukrainians. Yeah, so I mean, Chernobyl still has the exclusion zone. One thing that I find absolutely fascinating, and this audience might enjoy hearing, is that the density of wolves in the Chernobyl exclusion zone is 7 times higher than the density of wolves outside of the exclusion zone, which suggests that humans are actually more dangerous to wolves than radiation. But on the note, I think actually Fukushima provides some more lessons on all of this. The Japanese have done a tremendous job cleaning up after Fukushima. They have these monthly spreadsheets that come out with thousands and thousands of measurements of cesium-137 in the food. And the drop we think is tremendous. What we can do is we can clean up the topsoil and we can apply potassium fertilizer, which is then preferentially uptaken by the plants. So, yes?
Well, thanks for sharing the story. What blows me away is, I mean, I think you guys are doing an amazing job, actually. But those are not super hard measurements to make.
They're
I'm
not
very
hard
surprised
measurements. No, they're not.
that publishes that this hasn't been done before.
Well, it has been done. It has been done by DOE, and they it's actually sort of appalling that the
They don't
taxpayers'
release
money
it?
go. They publish without any context, or for the simplest measurements, and this is what really gets me mad about this stuff, is for the simplest measurements, they use measurements from 1970 and then extrapolate and make assumptions about how the radioactive isotopes get washed out in the water. I mean, it's kind of ugly. And then they use things like, they'll report radioactive concentrations in becquerels per gram. Everybody will report becquerels per kilogram, and they'll report becquerels per gram, because then it looks like 0.00, and I always say, like, well, why don't you just report in becquerels per nanogram? It would be way smaller. Anyway, thank you. Yes.
If you have more questions for Ivana, we probably should move on. Thank you so much, Ivana.